I think that's right. I think that, so to me, certainty is kind of a dirty word, because, and it's very much in the spirit of what you're saying. As soon as you become certain that, like, my view, my way of looking at it is absolutely right, this is absolutely what has to be done, you may be right, possibly, but I would argue we never know for sure. And if you extend the time horizon long enough, like, who's to say what's a good decision versus a bad decision? So the answer is don't have certainty. And I think that's what you're getting at. If you step back from that certainty, if you step back from 100%, even to 95%, that little bit of room allows you maybe to find some common ground. So I think that's right. But I also think that the example is such a good one, because it gets back to the theme throughout this conversation. I think it's like, on paper, the idea of doing for others, figuring out what you value, bringing value to the world, it feels like it has to be the right answer. But then you look at these instances where you get into the complexity and the nuance of life, and it's like that framework doesn't seem to apply, because exactly what you're saying, both sides there, you could see them saying, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm trying to bring value and help the world and make the legacy be better. And that's what makes me wonder if, like, we've almost gotten too smart for our own good, in that we understand and believe it should be about other people and helping people. But in very realistic, practical terms, when it gets real, that just doesn't work. It causes conflict, and maybe that's the reason for all the conflict we've ever seen. Now, there's no answer in that. Like, does that, I don't know, is that like a gloom and doom approach? Like, we're just doomed to this. This is just what life is just constant conflict, because there is no actual playbook that says this is the right answer, this is what you do. And that's where I struggle from a philosophical perspective. I don't know where to go. Like, I still have this sensation of, like, it doesn't mean give it all up and just nothing matters. That can't be right. But again, at the same time, I can't make an argument for why it's not right.
It's funny that you made a comment. What was it that you said? It was you can't know for sure,
right,
if this is good and that's bad. And it reminded me of, it's like a parable or something, Taoist parable, the farmer,
with his son, like, he breaks his, yeah. Could be good news, could be bad news. Yeah. And that's the challenge, right? Because back to where we start this episode, right? What's the value? I asked that question, as I said to you before the show, because I think in its purest form, and I've heard you talk about this too, like, when you really think about what you value, why that's so important is because it drives everything you do. Like, you may not admit what you value, you may not even realize what you value, but to me, everything we do is a mathematical calculation, right? You being on this show, you ran some calculations. I could do something else with this time, but I want to be on, you ran a pros cons, right? So those values become almost like the mathematical structure that drives everything we do. And if there isn't actually a true good and bad, if there isn't a way to actually value these things effectively, it starts to ask the question of, like, well, then why am I bothering thinking about it at all? Like, I'll never know the right answer. I'll never know the wrong answer. Could be good news, could be bad news. It gets to where you're going with the philosophy before, of like, well, yeah, then none of it matters. But as I think you do, there's this compulsion in many of us, I think, that says, like, I get all that, but I still feel like I need to help that person. It still feels like the right thing for me to do is to make my daughter smile or to help her better off. And that's one of those questions that I don't know that we'll ever have the answer to. And maybe that's the beauty of life, like, never knowing that juxtaposition between the two. But
well, I think that that parable about, who's to say if it's good or if it's bad, until you actually play everything out to the end. I mean, and again, that goes back before, the existentialist movement, but it is essentially existentialism. Our true essence isn't realized until we take our last breath.
The end.
And I mean, who I am now is different than the me that was walking around yesterday. This conversation has really helped me dig a little deeper and made me kind of think about things in a way that maybe is connected some things, because I don't know that I actually had thought about it in the sense of it being my, like, what is most valuable to me. but when you get down to the core, that is,
That's it.
you know, what drives me, why I have my podcast, why I, you know,